Disinformation is destructive. Fake news buries the facts and distorts the truth. What can journalists and activists do to fight back against false narratives? The four partners in the EU project, S-Info Sustainable Information, held 3 online debates in search of answers. In the first debate, special guests discussed the weaponization of false narratives against gender and LGBTIQ+ rights.
The issue of abortion is becoming highly polarized in many European countries, with the rise of movements claiming to give women the right not to have an abortion. Violence against women is still given too little consideration, victims' voices are not taken into account, and on the contrary, organized networks and leading figures come to the rescue of men accused of violence. Locking women into the role of mother, failing to find expert women to speak out in the media, or reducing women to the first names or physical characteristics, these are all stereotypes that tell a false story and leave a lasting mark on people's minds. Violence against women is unfortunately still very often presented as the work of a man who loved them too much, as a crime of passion. Victims of gender-based violence are often portrayed as sharing the blame, as being partly responsible for the violence they have suffered. And about the LGBTQI+ people, disinformation narrative aims to portray transgender people as suffering from physical and mental illness, as is still sometimes the case for bisexuals and homosexual persons. These claims often appear as supported by scientific studies, papers, and statistics that eventually turn out to be false or misinterpreted. The same false claims that LGBTQI+ people were the only people affected by HIV, AIDS, or monkeypox, or that they were more easily affected by COVID-19, were also widely disseminated in Europe at various times, helping to accentuate their discrimination. The place of transgender women is often the subject of debate, with its share of fake news in sports competitions, prisons, and public toilets. Other messages, which take very different forms depending on the media and the country, circulate about a certain LGBTQI+ or a feminist lobby, which is said to be overpowering and to impose its vision of the world in schools, in ministerial cabinets, in the police, or the judiciary, or even in the media world. The media play an important role in our societies, both as a source of information and in shaping opinions and attitudes. These false narratives accompany the rise of extreme politics and a certain radicalization of our societies, which tends to attack minorities as its first target. Minorities in the sense of power, not in the sense of numbers.
So how can journalists and activists work together against the haters, deniers, and deceivers who spread fake news and disinformation on gender and LGBTIQ+ issues?
I will talk from the experience in Romania. The role of the journalists actually during the referendum campaign in 2015-2018 was really important because the mainstream media didn't buy the general discourse of the family coalition and the false narratives they wanted to spread. The family coalition was forced to spread their information through different channels, which were not the mainstream media. And the civil society in Romania, which was fighting for equal rights, had the support of the journalists, which were trying to present the situation and the whole campaign in a very fair way, and they brought into attention of the Romanian citizens the situation of the LGBTI rights in Romania, and that was really helpful. I think that it's not only the role of the journalists, but it's also the role of the activists to put together journalists with people coming from different grounds to bring their knowledge in order to fight against disinformation, because all these false narratives bring different or need different type of knowledge in order to respond to them. For example, answering to that question, what is a woman? It's not that easy to answer to this simple question, because women is a complex human being, and their intention is to reduce this answer by defining the women by their reproductive roles, their biological roles. But a woman is more than that, and to answer to this question in a good way and to create a debate, a real debate about this in the public space, is to bring different specialists to talk about women and their rights and their needs, and to give a voice to different women. So it's about the role of the civil society, of the journalists, and of the specialists with different backgrounds to counteract these false narratives.
What journalists need to do is, of course, there has to be fact-checking, there has to be collaboration, but working hand in hand with activists and representing people, because before I said that we are censored by the state media and by the dominant media, but the independent media, the journalists of the independent media in Malta, really fought our case. We were born after, I'm going to rush through this, after Daphne Caruana Galizia was murdered. And we decided as an all-woman group to fight because they killed one of us. Because basically for 30 years, she was vilified, she was dehumanized because she was a woman. She was a woman standing up to the men in power because it was dominated by men, and she was showing them up for their corruption. And we started as activists, so my appeal is to journalists and to activists. As activists, we understood early on that to get the attention of the media, we need to create visual actions. So something that is interesting for them to report, obviously with an important message. So instead of just releasing a press release that goes buried under 1 million other press releases that are released by other organizations, we decided to go the visual route. We're not an NGO. We just create visuals for you know, this is at the Prime Minister's office, for example. This is against his front door of his office. But my appeal again to activists is that we help the media with our actions. We help the media with what we do.
Well, we believe that as activists and writers and journalists all together, we have both the power and the responsibility kind of to replace those dehumanizing stereotypes and to bring nuanced portrayals of both gender and sexual diversity into the world. The first point is that we believe that you should learn from the community. So as a journalist, before reporting on sexual or gender diversity, you should educate yourself about the unique issue that that specific person or people face in the context of their own community and yours. And the best way to do that is to basically introduce yourself to the local community that you're trying to represent. And while some of them may be hesitant to meet you, maybe for safety reasons, maybe because they're used to bad reporting, it's still important to extend that invitation. The second is basically to educate your audience while you're talking, because reporting can be, yes, to inform and entertain, but also to educate. Some outlets, for example, exploit sexual and gender minorities to entertain their audiences or pander to their fears, for example, as we've seen. But these approaches are, of course, dangerous and unethical. And so instead, we should strive to produce sensitive coverage that educates and informs, to challenge myths, of course, because it's one of the, we think, key roles of the journalist is to challenge those myths and stereotypes and misconceptions. So, do not use sources that repeat myths that are false. You can exclude them altogether from your reporting, or maybe bring them on alongside accurate information that reveal the source ignorance or bias. And of course, allow the sources to speak for themselves, because a common thing that we've noticed among especially LGBTQ plus right activists is that nothing should be, that we say that nothing should be about us without us, because of course then the covering of these instances is derogatory or false or not accurate. And the last one is be honest with yourself. We have our own beliefs and biases. If you think that you cannot cover LGBTQ plus issue, for example, with honesty, with fairness, with accuracy, with sensibility and sensitivity, find someone else who can, because gender and sexual minorities exist in all of our communities, and their stories need to be told in a way that's comfortable and that's good and that's not derogatory. So if you cannot, just be honest about that and move on.
Let's be honest, disinformation on LGBTQ things and gender things, violence against women, all of that this is a type of content that get viral because people are sexist, people are homophobic, transphobic. This kind of narrative tap into biases and feelings that are there. They are still there, even in places where you think they are not so strong. So people engage with this kind of content, and this is good for the business models of these platforms. They want contents that engage people. They want people to lose time sharing and talking, and they profit from that. They profit from the conflict from both sides. That's why Meta are like super. They say they are super LGBTQ friendly. They have internal policies, blah, 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 but they also block, they censor LGBTIQ content in the platforms. They are not friends of LGBTIQ movements at all. The same you can talk about Disney in the United States. They support both the opposition and the LGBTIQ movement, and they make rights on the Disney park. They put LGBTIQ characters in their movies. So like, they put sometimes money both sides, and they want to see the conflict. The conflict is profitable. The hate against LGBTQ people is profitable. They are transforming everything in profit, even the hate. So that's why it's so juicy. That's why it's so popular. And I think when we talk about the role of journalists and activists, there are so much space for building resilience, capacity building. I absolutely love everything that my peers said here. There are so many things that we can do to resist, because I don't think it's gonna change. I don't think disinformation is gonna disappear. I think it came to stay. This is the new landscape of media and of the public sphere right now. And we just need to find ways to better live with it, because there is not only one or two or three voices that are legitimate right now to say things. The patterns of production, consumption of information changed, and we have to adapt.